Nerd Morning, everyone. My name is Jeremy, and we are watching the Nerd Morning Show. I am right now doing my first video call video, and I'm really, really excited with this. I've got my brother Joseph here, who is a tremendous Brandon Sanderson fan, and we are going to talk about the prologue and first 16 chapters of Rhythm of War, which were early released on multiple form platforms, and I just am so excited. There's so much to just deconstruct just from here.
Give it.
Right?
Yes.
So
so much.
We're doing this, it's nearly a month before the book even comes out. And so a major spoiler warning. We're going to go in here. We're going to talk about the stuff that's going on in this book, going around in the Cosmere, which is the extended universe for Brandon Sanderson's fantasy novels. And there is going to be stuff here that if you want to find things out as you go along, as you're reading, that as
Come
sad
back
to say, you come back afterwards. But if you've caught up, if you've been reading Brandon Sanderson, I think we've got a lot of awesome stuff here that we're going to be talking about.
Oh yes. Yeah. Second spoiler warning, everyone. The greatest joy I've ever had in literature, seriously, has been figuring out all of the clues that he's been leaving in all of his Cosmere books from Elantris. There are little clues that he's been leaving about how the Cosmere works, what's the greater behind the scenes story, Hoid, and all of those things.
Yeah.
So honestly, if you don't care about spoilers, stick around, it'll be fun. But if you seriously figuring it out, when Jeremy started reading the books, I was like, have you found Hoid yet?
Right. And I'm wait, where, what?
Right?
And yeah, totally.
It's so fun.
Try to drop links to these of how you can get caught up to the Rhythm of War here on this. I'll add that to the description for the video. And I recommend watching those. If you haven't listened to or read, yet up through the prologue through 16, you can start right here and come back to us, hopefully. And come back and watch this. It's oh man, I'm doing the absolute worst thing that an entertainer or broadcaster should do.
Right?
And I'm telling you, not watch. Oh man. Okay, so I think that we've preemptively warned now sufficiently.
Yes.
So let's jump in. Okay, so the biggest takeaway for me so far from this, this is that the Cosmere is becoming a thing here in Roshar.
Yeah, it's opening up.
I would say that previous to this, you could read any of the books out of order or anything and not really know any of those associated worlds, and you'd get the story and you'd be okay. And I don't know if that's necessarily true anymore.
Yeah.
I think that this one is starting to require some foundational knowledge on at least a couple of books.
At least the previous Stormlight books. I've started a series in the middle before, unknowingly.
Okay.
And I felt a little bit lost. Authors do a good job, especially Brandon Sanderson. He'll fill in enough of the information.
Yeah.
But you're still missing all of the details, all of the nuances, especially Shallan's multiple personality.
Yes.
If you didn't go through Oathbringer, you're not going to get it.
Yeah.
You're not going to understand really what's going on with that. You're just going to see this girl with multiple personalities, and that'd be kind of okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But
I would say that's true. He does a lot of foundational work, helps us out with a whole lot of different things. But I think one of the big things that we are needing now is they're starting to reference Scadrial, and
Yeah.
so you're like, what is this? And if you've read Mistborn and oh, that's the planet for that story, then you're
You're like, ooh,
making a
ooh,
connection
ooh,
because they're
over there.
referencing something specific. And
Yes.
I think that Warbreaker is now a required reading for Rhythm of War. I think
Seriously.
because you have characters that are directly from those books,
Yep.
that book, and you have like even like some of their magics exposed. So
Right? This is a spoiler when we can say it.
yeah.
Kaladin and Xyle get into a little fight.
Yeah.
And Xyle uses Awakening.
Yeah. And
Okay.
like exactly how he's using Awakening, like that's maybe to be discovered. Is it Stormlight? Is it Breath? Are they
Right?
the
Yeah.
same thing? But
Right?
just
Can any of the energies of the Cosmere be used by any of the awakened, if infused, higher power beings? Are they transferable? Or is
like
Xyle living off of a storehouse of breaths that he just has?
because
Right?
it looks like he's not able to obtain breath while he's on Roshar.
Right, yeah. The people don't have that magic, that energy source specifically.
So, yeah, exactly. And so in there, I think that it's like really like important to be able to like realize that they've got to be getting their magics powered somewhere. And if Hoyd has been running around doing all of his magic all over the place, which we have actually seen throughout.
Yep. Collecting all of the magic abilities is my theory.
And rather than necessarily the sources as well, because like if you are here in Roshar and you need to like charge up your life source, can you do that by Stormlight?
Right.
I don't know. It's an interesting thing that we are now suddenly posed with, which we really haven't had to consider up till now.
Right. Well, a little bit. Was it Oathbringer? I believe it was Oathbringer where Yasna and Hoyd are talking and she's kind of mad at him. And he's like, go ahead and hit me with your silly shard blade. It won't even hurt me.
Yeah.
Like,
well, he is a unique level of human. And I don't know, like he comes from the original planet.
Right.
And
he knew Adonalsium before the breaking. We know there's something.
Or at least knew of Adonalsium. Yeah.
Yep. And we know from his letters, I believe it's in Words of Radiance, where he has a personal grudge against Race, who is Odium.
Yes.
So
he is among the shard. What would you call them? Shards? Just simply shards. The gods. He's and the thing as well is like the Horn Eaters. Some of them have the ability to see Spren. That just are able to. Boom. And we have our own local resident Horn Eater, and
who saw Hoyd come out of the pool, the perpendicularity,
and he computes him as deity just in the same level as the Spren or these other types of individuals. He sees him as this higher being. And I don't know, there is some level of truth to that, which I think that gets us interesting is because Rock and his family are returning.
Right.
And that was a thing that was happening in this book.
I know, it made me sad. I'm like, Rock.
So I like, are we going to have story there? is that perpendicularity supposed to be an important thing? Like even Caledon already has like considered in this book, in the side of the 16 chapters, I should go. I should go and see that place. And I think that could be a setup or a foreshadowing for something that's moving future.
It could be.
And that that perpendicularity with their lake could be a big story point, particularly since it's been referenced and set up on multiple books now in this series.
Yeah, in this series and similar places in the other worlds.
Yeah,
as well.
Scadrial has that. I mean, like book 2 for Mistborn, that is what it's all about. So it's about a perpendicularity, and that's exactly where Vin releases the power and has all of that stuff.
Releases ruin and
Yes.
So yeah. Anyway,
okay.
Speaking of Scadrial, let's jump into metals.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so the big thing that poked out to me in what they're talking about so far in here is really just like the notes that we're getting at the beginning of the chapters. Because they're saying, here is this way that we work on and doing this fabrial. And I'm seeing like, aluminum. You're using aluminum for a particular way. And because of my reading of, and I'm like, hey, these are special metals.
These are allomantic metals.
Particularly for Scadrial, but is there some tie or some association?
I think yes. I have questions of, are all metals throughout the Cosmere allomantic? Or do they have to come from Scadrial to be allomantic?
Yeah.
Or is there some relation to metals and the powers, no matter where they are?
Yeah, see, I don't know, like, would somebody who is, and this goes back to the question of, like, powers and power sources, is would a Mistborn individual have to burn metals on Roshar?
Ooh.
You know?
I like how you phrased that. Or could they just take Stormlight
and then manifest the, if they are a misting and they are a Tinai, if they burn Stormlight, or do they use the metal, and the metal being infused by the Stormlight, thus they have their intrinsic ability?
Right.
I mean, there's questions here, and I'm certain that Brandon Sanderson has asked these questions, has wondered these types of things, because he has individuals hopping from world to world. We see that specifically here,
especially on Roshar.
And like the very beginning, the prologue, if we actually kind of jump into the story a little bit, King Galavar, the very beginning, he is having this big meeting. They go back to the night where he was killed over and over again in these prequels. And I think it's interesting because the different perspectives open up to just how big one day can be.
It's really fun. It's clever. I like it.
It's super cool. And we see that though the Parshendi want to kill him because he wants to awaken their gods, we start to see why he wants to do that, because he's like involved with a couple, it seems, secret societies.
Yeah.
And he ultimately knows far more about the world and the Cosmere than almost anyone else.
More than he should.
Point. Certainly. More than I think is even natural for him, even as an investigative individual, because there are others that are so scholarly and really searching for these type of answers who don't know this as much as him.
Right.
And but like we go there in the very beginning, and he is interrupted by this meeting, and he's talking to these people, and he's like soft referencing multiple planets, the Cosmere, all multiple powers. He's even like going as far as saying that he wants to reach immortality, and that's
Right.
like becoming a shard bearer, a shard, not
A
a
shard,
sword bearer, a
a
bearer.
shard of Aldenalsium.
Yes,
That's it.
one of the
Shard of
big
Aldenalsium.
16 shards that essentially makes you a divinity in the magic of the Cosmere.
Yep.
And so here's this guy who's like, I'm king and I'm going to become God. And that means he needs to call forth gods to then slay. And he somehow felt confident about this plan.
Right.
And it was to such a level that he was able to create the cataclysmic events that happened upon Roshar, which are throwing us in to everything that's happened so far in the three previous volumes and this one now.
Right. Even though he died,
Yeah.
stuff kept going.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Quick pause.
Yeah.
You got to move your mic again. Sorry.
Okay.
Some up. Try up even, and out just a bit. Okay.
How's that?
Say some sa and puh.
Pudding, popcorn, super smart,
Okay.
smacking.
Good. Sorry, you had a few more there. And I'm like, oh, I don't want people to not like it.
Ooh,
okay.
It's painful. All right. Thanks.
Yep.
Oh boy. Well, maybe you guys will keep that, and we'll just let you enjoy that moment there. So yeah. All right. Train of thoughts and stuff.
Right.
So
let's talk about maraes a little bit.
Let's
doing some of this world hopping stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
Maraes and the Ghost Bloods. Are the Ghost Bloods broader than just on Roshar?
I think that that's a real possibility. I think that Roshar is their hub, and I think they like it because it's so. This is the most infused of all the planets because it's got 3 shards here. And I don't think any other ones have 3. They have 2 maybe.
A couple others have 2.
But
all of those have either blended into one or were splintered and destroyed by Odium.
Yeah.
So
and are maybe dead shards, which how that works, I don't know.
Right. a lot of Raphos here.
Yes. So I think this is like the place to be. Also, I think the magic, the Stormlight, is so mundane. It happens every couple of weeks. They get a storm, they get infused, that if these are transferable for other magics or other types of things, this is a very useful planet. Also, if you can get infused gems, and those gems can go to the cognitive realm, as we had seen, then
in Oathbringer.
Then you can then now sell magic. You can carry it, and so it seems to be like they kind of said, oh, for power and money, and they were kind of like, Shallan, it's going to be bigger than this.
Shallan was trying to dig at that with
but I mean, power and money, like if it's as simple as, hey, we are selling in magic and we can have freaking infused gems that we can bring over to all these different planets and they now have things, that is a tremendously powerful thing, especially since they're also expendable.
Right.
And
you have to run out, buy more.
Yep. And so that, I think, is a tremendously lucrative enterprise, particularly since in Roshar, it's not as valuable. Obviously, Stormlight in infused gems has been valuable enough to base their entire economy, but the other worlds do not have that at all. But if you could breathe in a certain amount of Stormlight instead of breaths, what would that affect the religions inside of that
Mm.
world.
Ooh.
How would people view breath if it was not purchasable by a human, but by a product?
Ooh.
Very different.
That would change that economy real fast.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think that's kind of my thoughts when it comes to the Ghost Bloods. There's tons of speculation,
Right?
nothing concrete at all. But like, she's like, it can't be just as simple as power and money. But I'm thinking, if you are controlling the economies of multiple
Right.
planets, it can be as simple as power and money, because it's a lot of
Yep.
power and a lot of money.
Power and money, but and not the kind of power that I'm the king. That
Mhm.
it's the kind of power that you tell the king what to do.
Yes.
Type
Yes.
of power,
Yeah.
right?
And
So
maybe there are some of the people in the Ghost Bloods who are similarly after collecting shard divinity powers. Like,
yeah, like
um,
Hoid seems to be.
uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
And there could also be people who are wanting to become divinities from the Ghost Bloods. Like, maybe the
Yeah.
leaders of the Ghost Bloods are a group that are trying to collect divinity shards. We've seen with like the
Secret
secret
history.
history, exactly.
Uh-huh.
We see that there was like a legit organization that went there and traveled
Yep.
with the sole purpose.
Intent
Uh-huh.
to capture the shard of ruin,
Uh-huh.
or no, of preservation.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
that was their plan. They were like, we're gonna collect this. This is gonna be ours.
Right.
And
I will ascend, and all of you can come too.
yeah, I don't know how the like
But
hierarchy works, how those like, I
yeah,
mean,
but they
but
built a city in the cognitive realm,
to camp
and they
out
were
in,
living there. So
yeah.
there's a lot going on behind the scenes that if others are figuring this out,
Mm-hmm.
um, uh, like the Ghost Bloods seem to be doing, like Shallan is doing.
Mm-hmm.
We've heard that Kelsier, in
That,
Sanderson has said Kelsier is not done.
yeah. And
So,
so, I mean, I'm kind of like, what is Kelsier doing? Is he
right?
trying to set up a big heist? Could he be involved in the Ghost Bloods? Like,
Right?
I don't know. So that's
He's,
all of that. I'm like, there could be some ties here, particularly how the Bands of Mourning ended when we
oh, yeah.
see red-eyed demons, as I think is how they're
Yes.
phrased. And
Right? The red eyes at the end.
I'm just like, is this the Parshendi
Right?
returned?
Is this some
Like,
odium, some influence of odium at the
yes,
least? Right?
simply that we can pretty comfortably say. And I think one other thing that was, we were talking about the whole Cosmere and the breadth of that was there, is they talked about the age of some of the different planets.
Yes.
Like Zyle, he talks about this. He pretty much
Uh-huh.
explicitly says, my planet is super young compared to your planet.
Yep.
And like, that was interesting.
Yeah.
Roshar has been referenced as being one of the older ones. It's thousands and thousands of years old,
Yep.
from the beginning, like prequel of prequels in the first book,
Uh-huh.
because there was like 3 prequels or something like that.
Yep.
And
Excuse me.
it's
Yeah.
just interesting that like we're seeing this variety, but I guess it's just, there's all coming together,
Yep.
and it's all coming ultimately to a head here.
That's my understanding, is kind of everything's going to kind of work its way together to climax, having a lot to do with Roshar and having a lot to do with Scadrial.
Yeah, probably
So,
Scadrial in its 3rd era.
4th now.
Fourth era.
Technically, third era. It was going to be 3. I don't know if he still calls it 3, but
Okay.
the Wax and Wayne books weren't part of his original Scadrial trilogy of
Oh
trilogy.
my gosh, those are the best.
I know.
Yeah. Okay.
Wind is my favorite.
I know. I mean, just being able to have like a cowboy-esque like
Right?
heist on a train with magic is just something that I
Right.
would never ever ever put together, and that's
Oh,
something that
I
he
know.
gives. Okay, so we talked a little bit about Zyle. Zyle is Vasher. We
Right. If
know
there's
this.
any
It's
doubt,
been pretty much established. We knew that pretty
yeah,
much last time, but now it's like, boom, he's using
yeah,
his uh, abilities. We see that how like his types of stuff works. Like, I would have been really interesting to see
he
him
he
versus
bled the color out of the scarf.
yes,
He was
and
using faces, human-like shapes in the fabric. Those are all directly from Warbreaker.
Warbreaker. Yeah.
So
Yeah. So I mean, that's like a big tie-in, and so that's where I'm going. Like, kind of at the beginning of this particular like conversation, was that I think that going forward from here in this series, you're going to need associative knowledge to really get the full experience.
yeah, to get
Because
the full experience for sure.
yeah.
So you can say,
oh,
oh,
he's doing a
yeah,
thing.
right?
And
It's nice otherwise too,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
just
Yeah, because like there are other things in the earlier books where it was like when Shallan met the Ghost Bloods and there were people that had like a mask and they would always wear a mask.
right.
You're like the first time I read that, I was like, okay,
Right.
that's a peculiarity. Interesting. You
Right.
moved on.
No
But
big
then
deal.
when I read,
After bands of mourning.
yeah, you're like, oh, there's a whole culture and society from a completely
Uh-huh.
different planet with different magic and all these other things. And that person is from that society.
Uh-huh.
All of a sudden you tie things together, and like I think that some of those like hints and clues are just going to be more and more overt.
Yes.
And
And I think most of them are going to come from Marays and the Ghost Bloods.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. And that's why I like them being a big group. So other groups that we have beyond the Ghost Bloods is we have the Sons of Honor. What is your take on Sons of Honor?
I think that started out as a idealistic group. I kind of think it's the same group that Teft's parents were from, that we kind of hear about a little bit, that they're so determined to have the Radiants come back that they would put themselves in harm's way and die.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to attract Spren and survive and stuff. I think it's kind of the same foundation where, you know, anything to get the magic and the radiance and the gods back, because times were better then.
Yeah.
Forget that there were, you know, void bringers and stuff. So I think it's kind of that foundation where they're a little bit more on the zealot side.
Yeah.
Where anything to support their cause, they're going to be all for that. And that zealot nature pushes them onto the manipulated side rather than anyone who's actually going to create any real change.
Yeah. Okay, so we've hit the Cosmere pretty heavy. We've hit magic pretty heavy. Characters, the things that we've seen so far in this story, I feel like there was some significant stuff going on with Shallan as well as Caledon, particularly in terms of mental illness. And I think that like there's some things that Brandon Sanderson has done with different characters and dealing with trauma or dealing with certain issues. And I feel like he's done a really, really good job on various issues in his different books.
Yes.
With Caledon, we had this crippling depression, and he was
PTSD,
dealing with that with like the last couple of books. And this beginning 16 chapters
right?
Like he is hit
I'm retiring
hard.
you, right?
Yeah.
Caledon, you're done.
Yeah, and they kind of called
Ah!
it war, like war fatigue or
Uh-huh.
that kind of thing, and that's definitely a term that was used for PTSD in our own culture
Yeah.
back in the day,
Yep.
and they didn't really have a full understanding of that and how all that works. But I think that Caledon is more than just like having PTSD. I would
Yeah.
say that he legitimately suffers from depression, particularly since he talks about how the rainy months would get
Yeah.
him
When
low
he was a
and he would struggle
child.
as a child. And
Yep.
so I think that that's like a significant thing. And it seems like the experiences he has had is making that worse. And we're seeing it really come here in these last ones, even where he's like curling up in a ball in his bedroom after he's dealing with things and putting up a tough,
Right.
strong face and only to like, uh, curl up afterwards.
Right. Yeah. Adolin comes and tries to help him out, and yeah, I have so little experience or knowledge on that subject that I can only enjoy the ride and hope Caledon finds a way to embrace or overcome. I don't want to be insensitive on that because I know it's a real thing. I just don't
Yeah.
have much understanding. But me, for the hero that he is and the inspiration to me as a leader, I
Mm-hmm.
hope he can break out of that and come back to us as, you know, as the leader that he has been.
Yeah, and I think like one thing that's interesting and I think significant and probably from my understanding pretty accurate is he kind of goes in waves where he's like doing really good and he's super
Uh-huh.
heroic and then he crashes and he has these types of things. And
Yep.
honestly, like I think if he continues to have these waves and is an individual with depression that um, is able to get through, is able to succeed, is able to like overcome when he needs to, and maybe even to deal with that illness. Like I think that that's just really, really interesting, and I think it's interesting that the other major shard bearer that we have
Uh-huh.
has all
Also has
a mental illness.
issues.
She has multiple personality disorder.
At this point,
That's
not being a psychiatrist, that's what she has.
Yeah. And
Right?
yeah, I mean, I'm not a psychiatrist either. I don't like making the delineation of these types of things
Sure.
is
Yeah.
by a fan level trying to understand these characters, nothing more.
Yep.
But like, yeah, she's got multiple personalities. She even talks about shifting in and out
Right.
and how their stance, their position, they seem to have a shared memory, which
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't necessarily be the true case in
Right.
multiple personality disorder, I guess in some cases, but
Yeah.
they seem to have some type of level of symbiosis where she's working on it, but they also talk about how she's struggling and
Right.
how she's heading towards a potential collapse even.
Yeah. Or at least a fourth personality, it even sounds
Yes.
like.
Which seems to be
So,
maybe like a bad guy personality.
or the
Or,
completely broken side of her
yeah,
that remembers everything she's been suppressing for so long.
right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's interesting that there are these people with power who have serious scars.
Yeah.
And I honestly, if I go through each of the people I know who have been chosen as people who have spren companions and thus become radiant in
Uh-huh.
this, I think all of them have either a mental illness or baggage in some
Yeah.
significant
Well,
degree
I
that
think
maybe that's the
Syl
thing that like enables them to have that connection or bond.
I think Syl even says at one point, we're all broken.
Yeah.
Something like that, where it gives that idea that yeah, there needs to be something broken to fill in, or
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
I don't know.
so
Maybe Brandon Sanderson is a big plan for that. I think I just as terms of like representation, like it's cool to have a hero who has depression and
sure,
like that's interesting. That's something we don't get. We often get these really strong, overcoming everything people because that's
right.
kind of what you traditionally need. And
You
I just
get
think
the
it's
Aragons and the
right. They never
Supermans
doubt
and
themselves and all of
uh-huh.
that. And it's just, I don't know. For me, I really, really resonate with Caledon. I love that he has some of these levels of emotional battles.
Yep.
And I think that what I have read, he's done a very good job and a very tasteful job of dealing with some of those issues.
Yeah, I've watched interviews with him where he has consultants and helpers who really actually do understand these issues
Mm-hmm.
to help him portray it in a correct and considerate way
Yeah,
rather than just going off on stereotypes, which is awesome. It's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. Um, yeah, I like we had so many other things that are just going on, and we have like no hardly even touched on like the story, the overall
Right.
story, what we've got.
Well, we can
Um,
jump into one real quick
yeah,
part of it. Moraes' next mission to Shalon.
yes.
Go to the Honor Spren homeworld in the cognitive realm and kidnap this guy that we've
Mm-hmm,
been hearing about
mm-hmm.
since the beginning. What's his story? How is Shalon going to finagle things to need to go there and have a
Right.
reason to?
And what does that say about him to have been able to not only get an entrance to the Honor Springs city, but simply just to
Uh-huh.
make it to the cognitive realm
Yeah.
is a big accomplishment,
Yeah.
you know?
And excuse excuse me.
You're good.
We know he's connected to the Sons of Honor.
Mm-hmm.
I believe, unless I'm much mistaken, he was with Caledon when he was branded,
Mm-hmm.
right? He was the Ardent who was there, if I'm remembering correctly. I believe he had ties to um, uh, King Gavilar and ties to uh, the crazy king who's killing people and is a traitor.
Um,
Yeah, can't find it. Anyway,
yeah.
yes, the king who is a traitor to everybody and who's
Yeah.
willing to sacrifice everyone to preserve his 5%.
Yeah.
He's making a deal with Odium, who is,
Teravangian.
thank you, yes,
Oh
King
man, it took me
Teravangian.
so
That was a hard
long.
one.
Oh man.
uh, yeah, he's making a deal with Odium, who is
Uh-huh.
way worse than Ruin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
How
Odium
do you think
seems
this
to
is going to
be
work
the
out?
biggest bad of all
Oh
of the
yeah.
shards.
Oh yeah. Uh,
And yeah.
yes.
So yeah, I think that that is super interesting. And I think that's like going to be her story for this book. So
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yep.
For Kaladin, it's a lot more open because we've simply had so far his world taken away, and we don't
Yes.
yet have the things that is going to be given and replaced. We've had him
Yeah.
starting to explore what that's going to look like, what that's going to be, but we never got the answer in the first 16 chapters.
Right. What
But
is he
yeah,
going to choose to do?
yeah,
Can he stay away from battles?
right. So we had for Shalon relatively simple things going on. She went on a spy mission and it turned
Uh-huh.
out not perfectly.
Yep. The
And
last of the Sadiuses are dead. So,
yay, honestly.
right?
Um, and and now she's given this new quest from the Ghost Bloods. Like like her story was pretty cut and dry for the first 16 chapters.
Yeah.
we don't really get a lot of other we do get some other points of views, but we don't really get a lot of story other than Caledon.
Yeah.
The Foundation, he seems to like to build 2 stories at a time, and maybe a book's going to have
he's got
4.
3. Remember Venli. Don't
Uh-huh.
forget Venli.
Yes, that's true, because she's not just in the interludes anymore.
Right.
She's actually being in
She's
chapters. That's a good
character.
point.
So
yeah, that one, I guess, was 2 chapters for hers.
2 full and maybe some other little bits of chapters. Yeah.
And so, yeah, that honestly, out of 16, like, that's a significant number.
Yep.
Yeah.
She's definitely a third perspective character.
All right, let's hit her, and then let's last hit with Caledon's story. So her story is interesting because she is getting farther and farther away from the belief that her side has all the answers and is doing all the right things.
Right. She's starting to understand some things, and there's a huge foreshadowing thrown out that apparently the singers can be trapped in gem hearts.
Yes.
Foreshadowing there. Whereas
big piece of news.
Right.
Which is honestly like the key to save them.
It's the key
save
to
the
win
world from that. Yeah.
Right. That we now know how they can all win. It's going to be Navani, you should know this.
Right. Well, with that as well is she sees her gods, as they kind of phrase them, as being invaders to her own people. And so her people, they see them as their divinities. They don't question. They were essentially awakened because of them. And so they do owe a lot to them because they were essentially trapped by the humans way back in history. And so like them as a people, the Parshendi, have definitely like progressed because of them. But these people, their gods, are essentially saying, now let's go to war, eradicate everything, and we don't even care if you all die for us to succeed. Like, even if our people are all killed, that's worth it to exterminate the humans.
We've been doing this fight for so long, it's all we can see.
And they even talk about that they are more and more like Spren the longer that they are alive, and that they have essentially become an idea and more than a person. And so they're trapped into this way of thinking. They can't escape it. They're essentially also kind of setting them up as being essentially creatures than people. That way we maybe don't feel narratively bad to destroy them.
Maybe, yes.
But
so Venli's dual gem heart occupation, the Void Spren and the Spren of Honor. Kind of interesting. Wonder where that's going to go.
It's cool. I think that she has a lot of potential, and I'd love to see her saying the oaths and progressing, and I think that would be a really interesting and cool thing to see, particularly from a Parshendi individual.
Yeah, she could have created the major problem and be the solution.
Yes, which I like this. The cool thing inside of different books. I mean, it's trope-ish, but it's a trope that honestly really works and is super satisfying when pulled off well, and I have faith that it will be. So we have like some good things that we're able to go on with that. With Venli, like, she essentially is a hidden Knight Radiant, and also kind of like a hidden Void Bringer. Like, she's got so much potential, and she could be the greatest good and the greatest evil, at this point. And I think that we're setting her up to be a great hero. So that's cool.
Yes. Caledon.
Okay, so Caledon's first like story moment is actually told by the perspective of his father
Right?
back
That's fun.
home. And that was cool. It was interesting because his father has a high level disappointment for Caledon because he's a warrior and he wants him to be a healer, and he
Right.
has such a strong disdain for shedding of life, for causing harm. He would rather patch up 1,000 Parshendi than harm a single one of them.
Right.
And he
Right.
sees no ill out of any conflict, and he would just like everyone to get along. And so
Right.
I feel like he's a bit of an idealistic individual in the world that he's living in, and Caledon's kind of become a realist, and
A
maybe
little
even
bit,
um,
or he's just picked a side.
yeah,
Now, you can't walk in the middle, or like Mr. Miyagi says,
yeah,
squish like grape.
yeah,
So
yeah.
Liren has picked this side.
Mm-hmm.
Kaladin, he was trying to be in the middle for a while. I think he still is a little bit, kind of, a little bit the surgeon, a little bit the warrior.
Yeah, which I
And
mean,
that
it's
might be where some of his internal struggle is coming from,
sure,
is walking in the middle.
sure,
So he needs to pick a side and commit to it, and Liren has.
yeah,
So that's just me thinking out loud, but
yeah.
it could be part of Kaladin's struggle.
It's very possibly that's a motivating factor for his different internal struggles that he's having. Is he's got definitely an issue with identity, of self-identity,
Yeah.
and I think some of those things we've seen him war against so far. So he has that. They get on something that's so cool that we haven't even mentioned at all, the fourth bridge.
The flying
And
machine.
right, that's cool. It sounds like a very impractical flying machine in the large scale. Like
Uh-huh.
they talk about that, how there are all of these other people doing all this work
Right?
in order for them to fly.
It's so impractical.
It's like,
But they did it.
but they did it, and there's nothing
Uh-huh.
like that in Roshar at this point.
Right.
And like, so it though is so labor intensive, it is beyond powerful in comparison to anything that anyone else has.
Yeah.
So that's powerful. That's cool.
Right. Like the
And
end of Bands of Mourning, the flying ships that uh, they find from the other culture.
mm-hmm.
It was either going to be war and destruction over that technology, or the way Wax got it was, let's start trading
Mm-hmm.
with each other.
Yeah, that was a really clever
It
solution
was
that
a
they had.
clever solution for Wax. So yeah, we'll see if the um, prediction of the one admiral
Mm-hmm.
of this is going to ruin all of everything and
Right.
nothing's going to be the same, or is it going to be so cumbersome for so long that they only have one or two of them ever?
Yeah, I think that what we might see is a smaller, refined version that starts to becoming more popularized, because with that we might be able to expand. But certainly a battleship size, which is essentially what this is a multi-story building pretty much that's floating.
Yeah,
Like we may
it's
not
like a
see many of
football
those.
field. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But it's super cool that they were like, the Bridge 4 is so important to us and who we are now that we're naming this the fourth bridge, and
building
like
the bridge into
into it, which is
it.
super awesome as
Right.
well.
That's neat.
And also them having an aerial army, with
Mhm.
all of Kaladin's troops, as it were. That's a huge change in their military and
Right.
development, and it's cool that we see these characters grow and progress, even though honestly we didn't spend a lot of time with any one of them.
Yeah.
like we just get a little tastes of here and here and here, but essentially they're doing their own things, and we've kind of experienced kind of them from afar, which is also how Caledon emotionally has been feeling with them. So there's a parallelism, which I think is nice. Though I love all his characters and I want to spend all the time with them. So
right, like, give me all Caledon, all Caledon. I felt like that the first time going through Way of Kings. I was like, Shallan's okay. I want Caledon. I want
yeah.
but no, to really grow with all of the multiple characters.
Yeah.
It's nice to see their progression.
Yeah. Dalinar's abilities, super cool.
Right.
He's really started to figure things out, and
Yep.
they now essentially have an unlimited source of Stormlight.
Yep.
It's going to cost him in order to be able to do that. I mean, there's definitely a give and take there because it seems like he gets tired or whatever.
Right.
But I mean, essentially, you got your bearer. He's flying around and does all this crazy stuff, expends all of his energy, goes back to Dalinar, boom, ding, one up life. That's kind of what I was experiencing. Kind of reading it. I was like, that's cool.
That's cool. That's cool. It does set him up though to be like the queen in chess.
Yes.
You're gonna focus everything on destroying that one piece.
Yeah, he's got so much power, but if you're able to take him off the board, that's a game-changing experience, particularly since all of them are interested in what is happening with the crystals that only someone like him is really able to access.
Right.
And they have yet to figure that out, which I think is going to be a big part moving forward into the story, particularly on the side of the Prashendi.
Yes. How all of the void light and the storm light and all the spheres and the crystals and the mixing of the Cosmere and all the energies. Personally, I don't think we're going to get a whole lot more Cosmere intermix in this book, because we've had so much, and now there's so much of this story to get through.
Right.
I don't know how many more juicy nuggets we're going to get like we did so far, but
the first 16 chapters littered, absolutely
so many.
littered with them. So that, I don't know. I don't know. We'll wait and see.
We'll see.
I am super, super excited for this. I think we're going to be having some awesome stuff in this book.
Oh, can't wait.
I absolutely can't wait. I already have my book pre-ordered. And I love that we're getting these, I guess, like these sample chapters from Brandon Sanderson and from Tor. That
it's great marketing.
I'm sharing them and doing that. I don't know. I think we talked about a lot of things. I don't really have a ton more on my list of things to hit. Do you have other things on yours that you were wanting to be able to cover?
The only one I can't remember if we mentioned during the metals discussion was the singers have metal on their weapons that the shard blades can't cut.
Yeah.
Right?
That's interesting.
Personal theory is that harmonium.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I don't know. Is something about the conjoining of ruin and preservation, that metal, does that it gives it special properties on Scadrial, right? Does it also give special properties on Roshar? I guess we'll find out.
Could the importation of metals be part of what the Ghostbloods are doing? They could outfit, that type of a metal with a lot of individuals and
make money on both sides of the war.
Totally. I don't know. That's interesting, and I am really excited to be able to dive in and explore the Cosmere and Roshar in this upcoming book.
Right, and go back through all of the Cosmere with all of the knowledge we're learning now.
right? Like it's been like for the last like 3 years for me, like you read it all, and then I go and I read it all again, and
Yeah.
then every year, and so I'm like excited for the new year to go through some of them again. And on my channel, I'm planning on doing some book reviews where I'm going to be talking about a lot of the Cosmere. So for everybody who are Cosmere fans, be sure to like and subscribe and especially so you can get those videos in your feed when I start to drop those really heading into this next year. I'm going to be doing a lot more book reviews, doing a lot more literature, definitely still continuing with video games like we've been doing before, definitely still be doing comics. All of that stuff is going to continue. We're just going to get more. So I'm really excited for what I'm going to be able to be starting to give. And certainly conversations like this, I'm really, really excited to be continuing to do more of. And yeah, lots of stuff to really to be looking forward to this next year on the channel.
Yep. Cool. Exciting.
Super exciting. Well, I guess we should I guess
Sign off.
sign off. For those who do not know about the book and about when it's coming out November 17th of this year, 2020, and it's going to have 1,230 pages. A big book.
Big book.
So we have the first 16 chapters, and that is seriously just the very beginning of this book.
We barely scratched the surface.
So we'll probably sit down again sometime with the book again. So that's something to look forward to as well.
All right.
Cool. Well, yeah, we'll sign off. Thank you guys so much. And we'll join you guys again next time for another stream or other videos like this.
Bye.
Cancel.